Can I take the leftovers for my sister? Her tummy hurts real bad. A 5-year-old girl. No shoes. A torn yellow dress. She walks straight past 93 Hells Angels bikers, past the leather, the scars, the iron, and stopped in front of the most dangerous man in the room. She held up a crumpled paper bag and waited. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just stood there. And something in that man broke open. He dropped to one knee on the diner floor. And then, one by one, every single biker in that room stood up. 93 men, standing for a barefoot girl with a paper bag. What happened after that changed everything. Subscribe now, follow this story to the very end, and comment what city you're watching from. Let me see how far this story reaches. Cole Brannigan hadn't slept in 2 days. 93 Harleys behind him, 200 miles of desert ahead, and the only thing keeping him upright was black coffee and the kind of stubbornness that runs deeper than bone. They called him Stonehand, president of the chapter, 54 years old, a scar running from his right temple to his chin, a souvenir from a fight 20 years ago that nearly killed him. He didn't lead because he was the biggest or the loudest. He led because when everything fell apart, Cole Brannigan was the last man standing. Every single time. But Cole carried something none of his brothers talked about. Not ever. Not once. His daughter Emma died when she was 5 years old. A brain tumor. And Cole wasn't there. He was locked inside Ely State Prison, serving 14 months for aggravated assault. His wife Laura called him from a hospital payphone. The words came through a receiver bolted to a concrete wall. "She's gone, Cole. Emma's gone." He dropped the phone. He sat on the floor of that cell for 5 hours. A guard had to drag him out. Laura left him after that, changed her name, moved somewhere in Washington, no forwarding address. Cole didn't blame her. He blamed himself every single day for 19 years. So when Cole organized the annual Iron Trail charity ride, 93 bikes, 2 days, Reno to Long Beach, delivering a check to a children's hospital, it was never about the photo op. It was never about the press. It was penance. The only apology he knew how to give to a little girl who couldn't hear him anymore. They pulled into Dusty's roadside grill outside Beatty, Nevada, like thunder rolling across the desert. 93 engines shaking the windows. The diner went dead silent the moment Cole walked through the door. He walked straight to the waitress, mid-40s, name tag reading Patty. She was gripping her coffee pot like a weapon. "Ma'am, we need about 20 tables, all the coffee you've got, and whatever your cook can throw on the grill. We'll pay cash, tip heavy, and be out in an hour. That work for you?" Patty exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "I'll get the menus." And just like that, the diner exploded. Tables pushed together, orders flying, burgers, steaks, fries, onion rings, milkshakes. The cook, a thick man named Hank, worked the flat top with both hands going, cursing under his breath and grinning because he hadn't seen a full house in months. The bikers were loud, but not rude. They joked, argued about routes, arm wrestled over ketchup, stole fries off each other's plates. It was chaos, but it was family chaos. Cole sat at the center table with his officers. Cody Hayes, they called him Buckshot, 29, blonde buzz cut, a scorpion tattoo wrapped around a cross on his neck. Youngest full patch member, loud and loyal to a fault. Ray Dalton, Diesel, 46, broad as a refrigerator, father of 4, brown hair, blonde beard trimmed tight. The kind of man who could break a door frame and then cry at his daughter's dance recital. Will Pryor, preacher, 62, the oldest rider, a former street preacher from Skid Row who still carried a pocket Bible next to his knife. He'd buried more men than most people had met. And Grace Novak, Stitch, 39, brown hair pulled back tight, the only woman wearing a full patch, an ER nurse in her day job, and the club's medic on every ride. She'd stitched up knife wounds in gas station bathrooms and never once flinched. Stitch watched Cole push his steak around his plate. You're not eating. I'm eating. You're rearranging. That's not the same thing. It's the ride, Buckshot said, chewing with his mouth open. He always gets like this. It's the Emma thing. The table went dead. Diesel shot Buckshot a look that could peel paint off a truck. Buckshot dropped his eyes. Sorry, boss. I didn't mean... It's fine, Cole said, and his voice was flat, empty. The voice of a man who had learned to carry pain the way other men carry wallets. Always there, never mentioned. Diesel leaned in. You don't gotta do this ride every year, brother. Nobody would think less of you. Cole didn't answer. He just kept rearranging his steak. Because Diesel was wrong, Cole had to do this ride. Every year, until he was dead or until the guilt killed him first, whichever came sooner. That's when the door opened. Not with a bang, not with force. It opened slowly, barely enough for a small body to slip through. And the body that slipped through was so small that most of the bikers didn't even notice. But Cole noticed. The movement was wrong. Too low, too careful, too quiet. A girl, 5 years old, maybe less. Blonde hair so dirty it looked brown. A torn yellow sundress hanging past her knees, clearly pulled from a donation bin. No shoes. Her feet were red and cracked. She held a crumpled brown paper bag against her chest with both hands, the way a soldier holds a flag. She didn't cry. She didn't call for anyone. She stood perfectly still and scanned the room with eyes that were too old for her face. Gray eyes, pale and sharp. The eyes of a child who had already learned that the world is not a safe place. Then she moved. She walked through the tables of bikers like a ghost, slipping past legs, ducking under elbows, stepping over boots. Not one man realized she was there until she had already passed. She walked with purpose, straight through the noise, straight through the leather and the iron and the thunder, straight toward the center table. She stopped in front of Cole Brannigan. Her head barely reached the surface. She looked at the plates, half-eaten burgers, scattered fries, rolls still warm in their baskets. Then she looked up. She looked at the scar, the leather, the patches, the iron ring on his hand, the fist twice the size of her head, and she didn't run. "Mister," she said. Her voice was so small it almost disappeared beneath the noise. But Cole heard it like a gunshot. "Mister, can I take the leftovers for my sister? She's only 3 and her tummy hurts real bad." Cole's hand froze around his coffee cup. His breath stopped. The noise died in waves. Table by table, man by man. Buckshot stopped talking. Diesel put down his fork. Preacher closed his eyes. Stitch covered her mouth with her hand. 93 bikers went silent. The jukebox played a country song nobody was listening to. The cook stopped flipping burgers. And in that silence, the girl held up her crumpled paper bag, opened it, and waited. Cole stared at her. He couldn't move. Because he wasn't seeing this girl anymore. He was seeing Emma. Blonde hair, small hands, 5 years old. A child standing in front of him needing something. And this time, he was right there. "What's your name, sweetheart?" His voice cracked. He hadn't used that word in 19 years. Maisie Walker." "And your sister?" "Rosie, she's 3. She's in the car with Mama." "Where's the car?" "Out back, behind the big trash cans. Mama parked there so nobody would see." Cole felt something shift inside his chest, something heavy turning over. "Why doesn't your mama come inside?" Maisie looked at her bare feet. She curled her toes against the cold tile. Then she looked back up. "Mama said people don't help people like us. She said don't ask nobody for nothing. But Rosie cried all night because her tummy hurts. And I told Rosie I'd find her something. I promised." Cole closed his eyes. He pressed his fist against his mouth. Behind him, Buckshot gripped the edge of the table so hard the wood creaked. Diesel turned his face to the wall. Preacher's lips moved in silent prayer. Stitch had tears running down her cheeks and didn't wipe them. Cole pushed back his chair. The scrape echoed across the diner. He stood, all 6'3", 235 pounds, and every eye in the room watched him rise. Maisie flinched, a tiny backward shift, the instinct of a child who had learned to be careful around big people. Cole saw it. It hit him harder than any fist ever had. He didn't stay standing. He lowered himself slowly, carefully, the way you'd approach a wounded bird. He dropped to one knee on the diner floor, this massive, scarred, battle-worn president of the Hells Angels, and brought his eyes level with hers. "You're not taking leftovers, Maisie." Her face fell. Her lip trembled. She thought she was being told no. "You're not taking leftovers because I'm going to get your sister a real meal, a hot one, and one for you, and one for your mama, and it's not going to be what's left on somebody else's plate. You understand me?" Maisie searched his face. Her gray eyes swept every line, every scar, looking for the trick, the catch, the moment he would laugh and turn away. But there was no trick. "You promise?" she whispered. "Yeah, kid, I promise." Behind them, Buckshot stood, then Diesel, then Preacher, then Stitch, then the table behind them, and the one behind that, and the one by the window, and the one by the door. One by one, like a wave rolling through the room, every single Hells Angels member in that diner rose to his feet. 93 men standing for a girl with no shoes and a paper bag. Patty the waitress dropped her coffee pot. It shattered on the floor. She didn't pick it up. Hank the cook stepped out from his kitchen for the first time in years, wiping his hands on his apron, eyes red. And Maisie Walker, 5 years old, blonde hair, bare feet, crumpled paper bag, looked around at 93 giants rising from their chairs. She didn't understand what was happening, but she felt it. She felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Safe. Cole put his hand on her shoulder. Light, warm, steady. "Take me to your sister, Maisie." She grabbed his hand. Her grip was fierce for such a small hand, and she pulled him toward the back door without hesitation. Behind them, 92 men followed. Boots on linoleum, then boots on asphalt. Maisie moved fast across the scorching ground on those bare feet, and Cole had to shorten his stride to keep from lifting her off the ground. Buckshot was on his shoulder. Diesel, 3 steps behind. Stitch was already pulling a medical kit from her saddlebag. Preacher walked beside her, eyes scanning everything. Past the row of Harleys, past the propane tanks, past the dumpsters baking in the heat, and there it was, a minivan, a 2006 Chrysler Town & Country, once white, now mostly rust. The rear bumper held on with baling wire, the back window covered with a black trash bag and duct tape, the front tire on the driver's side nearly flat, riding on the rim. Maisie dropped Cole's hand and ran. She grabbed the sliding door and pulled. It took her 3 tries, her small arms straining, and the door screeched open on broken tracks. Inside, a little girl was curled in a car seat 2 sizes too small. Rosie, 3 years old, blonde hair matted to her forehead with sweat, lips cracked white, wearing a diaper and nothing else. She wasn't crying, she was past crying. Eyes half closed, breathing shallow and too fast. "She's dehydrated," Stitch said, pushing past Cole. "Badly." Cole's eyes moved to the driver's seat. Amber Walker was slumped against the steering wheel. 28 years old, blonde hair that hadn't been washed in days, maybe weeks. Her face pressed against her forearm. Even from 3 feet away, Cole could hear it. A wet, thick rattle in her chest with every breath. She wasn't sleeping. She was unconscious. "Mama." Maisie climbed in and shook her arm. "Mama, wake up. I found food. Mama, I found people who are going to help." Amber didn't move. "Mama." Maisie shook harder. Her voice cracked. The calm, steady child who had walked into a diner full of bikers without flinching was gone. In her place was a terrified 5-year-old shaking her mother with both hands, her whole body trembling, Mama, please. You said you'd wake up. You promised. Stitch moved fast. 2 fingers on Amber's neck. Pulled back an eyelid. Pulse is rapid and weak. She's burning up. 103, maybe higher. This isn't exhaustion, Cole. This is pneumonia. And it's bad. She needs a hospital. How bad? Stitch looked at him with the face she used in the ER when families asked questions they didn't want answered. If she doesn't get IV fluids and antibiotics in the next few hours, bad becomes worse. And worse becomes a conversation I don't want to have in front of these kids. Cole turned to Diesel. Call 911. Already dialing. Preacher moved to the other side of the van. He opened the passenger door. The seat was piled with everything this family owned. 2 plastic grocery bags of children's clothes. A gallon jug of water, almost empty. A sleeve of saltine crackers, mostly crumbs. A child's stuffed bear with one eye missing, tucked into the cup holder. And on the dashboard, a photograph. A young woman, Amber, maybe 2 years ago, smiling, healthy, holding a baby on her hip and a toddler by the hand. Behind her, a man, tall, clean-cut, blonde hair, strong jaw, his arm around her, smiling too. Preacher turned the photo over. On the back, in shaky handwriting, 2 words, never again. He put it back. He said nothing. Stitch poured the last of the water onto a bandana and pressed it to Amber's forehead. Amber moaned. Her eyelids fluttered. Amber, can you hear me? My name is Grace. I'm a nurse. You're safe. Your kids are safe. Amber's eyes opened barely. She tried to focus but couldn't. Maisie, she whispered. Her voice was gravel. Where's Maisie? She's right here. She's fine. Rosie's fine. We've got them. Amber's hand came up, trembling, and grabbed Stitch's wrist. The grip was feeble, desperate. Don't take my kids. Her eyes suddenly widened. Raw, primal terror. Please don't call. Don't call him. Don't tell him where we are. Stitch froze. She looked at Amber's face, really looked, and that's when she saw what the sweat and sunburn had been hiding. A bruise on her left cheekbone, faded to green and yellow. A split in her lower lip, half healed. Finger-shaped marks on her upper arm, purple and black. Stitch had seen these marks 1,000 times in the ER. She knew exactly what they meant. Nobody's calling anybody, Stitch said. Her voice was steel. Nobody's taking your kids. I swear to you on my life. But you're very sick and I need to get you help. Can you trust me? Something passed between them. Not words. Just one woman recognizing another woman's fight. Amber nodded once. Then her eyes closed and her hand went limp. Where the hell is that ambulance? Stitch shouted. Dispatcher says 20 minutes, Diesel called back. Nearest station is in Amargosa. 20 minutes is too long. She's septic, I can feel it. Cole sent Buckshot to the nearest gas station for water, Pedialyte, anything with electrolytes. Buckshot's Sportster screamed out of the lot and disappeared. Cole sat down right there on the asphalt, next to the dumpsters. He lifted Rosie from the car seat. She weighed almost nothing, limp and hot to the touch. He cradled her against his chest, her head falling against his shoulder, her shallow breath against his neck. And something happened to Cole Brannigan that hadn't happened in 19 years. He cried. Not loudly. A single tear tracked down the scar on his face, followed his jaw, and dropped onto the child's matted hair. Then another. Then another. Buckshot saw it. He turned away immediately, not from disrespect, because watching Stone Hand cry was like watching a mountain crack open. It wasn't supposed to happen. Diesel walked 10 feet away, faced the desert, pressed both fists against his forehead. His shoulders shook once, hard. Then he straightened up and went back to the phone. And across that parking lot, 92 other men who had fought in bars, been chased by police, buried brothers, survived things most people only see in movies, stood and watched their president hold a dying 3-year-old girl and weep. Not one of them looked away. Patty the waitress brought a tray out. Tomato soup, 2 rolls, warm milk, a banana, a chocolate chip cookie. She was crying so hard she could barely carry it. Cole held a roll out to Maisie. She took it. She tore it in half immediately and held the bigger piece back toward him. "That's for Rosie." Cole stared at the bread in the girl's outstretched hand. 5 years old, starving, and her first instinct was to give the bigger half to her sister. He closed her fingers around both pieces. "Rosie's going to get her own food, more than she can eat. I gave you my word. Now eat, Maisie, both halves." She searched his face one more time. Then slowly, she put the bread in her mouth. Her eyes closed as the taste hit her. And for just 1 second, she was just a little kid eating a roll. Nothing more. Cole dipped his finger in the warm milk and touched it to Rosie's lips. She didn't respond at first. Then faintly, her mouth moved. A tiny reflexive suck. "That's it, sweetheart," Cole whispered. "Stay with me." Diesel hadn't hung up the phone. He'd called his wife. The first thing he said was, "Tell the kids I love them." She asked why. He couldn't answer. He just said it again. "Tell them. Right now, go tell them." The ambulance arrived 19 minutes later. They loaded Amber onto a stretcher. She woke briefly. The first thing she did was reach out blindly. "My kids! Where are my kids? Maisie?" Maisie scrambled to the stretcher and grabbed her hand. "Mama, I'm here." Amber pulled her close, pressed cracked lips to her forehead. "You're okay. Where's Rosie?" "The big man has her. He's holding her. She's okay." Amber's eyes found Cole, standing 3 feet away, her daughter cradled against his chest, his scarred face wet. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm the guy who's going to make sure you and your kids are safe. That's all you need to know right now." "Don't leave them," she said as they loaded her in. "Please don't leave my babies." "Ma'am," Cole said, "you've got 93 men standing right here who aren't going anywhere. Your kids are covered." The ambulance doors closed. The siren fired up. Maisie stood watching it go, bread in one hand, crumpled paper bag in the other, bare feet blistering on hot asphalt. "She's going to be okay, right?" Cole knelt down. "She's very sick, but she's going to a place where people know how to help her. And you did that, Maisie. You walked into that diner and asked for help. You saved her. Do you understand that? You saved her." Maisie's chin trembled. Her eyes filled. Then she lunged forward, wrapped her arms around Cole's neck, buried her face in his leather vest and sobbed. Not quietly, not bravely. She sobbed the way a 5-year-old is supposed to sob. Messy, loud, with her whole body. The way children cry when they finally feel safe enough to stop being strong. Cole held her, one arm around Maisie, one arm holding Rosie, kneeling on scorching asphalt behind a row of dumpsters. And around them, 92 Hell's Angels stood guard, a wall of leather and iron in tears, protecting a family that wasn't theirs, but somehow, in that moment, absolutely was. They rushed the children to Beatty Community Hospital in Diesel's support van. Stitch rode in the back with Rosie, dripping Pedialyte into her mouth with a bottle cap, counting every shallow breath. Maisie sat on the floor beside them, one hand resting on Rosie's foot. A tiny anchor. The only thing holding that little girl to the world. Cole rode in the passenger seat. He adjusted the rearview mirror so he could watch Maisie. The girl's jaw was locked, eyes dry, breathing controlled. A 5-year-old in crisis management mode, holding it together because if she fell apart, who would watch Rosie? Cole turned around. "Maisie, you did good today. Whatever happens, walking into that diner took more guts than most grown men have." Her lip twitched. "Mama said never talk to strangers. Your mama's smart, but Rosie was hungry and I couldn't fix it by myself anymore." That word, anymore. It sat in Cole's chest like a blade. How long had this child been trying to fix it alone? How many nights had she rationed crackers and counted sips of water while her mother burned with fever and her sister cried from hunger. How many parking lots? How many dumpsters? How many dark nights in the back of that van? Cole didn't ask. He didn't need to. The answer was written on every crack in Maisie's feet. At the hospital, they took Rosie to pediatrics. Stitch followed with her nursing credentials, barking orders like she owned the floor. 2 nurses tried to slow her down. She didn't slow down. She grabbed the attending physician by the arm and said, 3-year-old female, severe dehydration, possible malnutrition, lethargic for at least 12 hours. You start a line now, or I start it myself. The doctor started the line. Maisie stood in the waiting room, staring at the closed doors where they'd taken her sister. Her face was blank, not calm, empty. The kind of empty that happens when a child has used up everything they have. They took her, she said, her voice flat. Cole squatted to her level. They're helping her, same as your mama. Grace is with her. She won't leave Rosie alone, I promise. You keep promising things. Yeah, I do. Maisie looked at the floor, pressed her bare toes against the cold tile. My daddy used to promise things too. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Cole didn't respond immediately. He let them sit, heavy and sharp and true, because he knew what was coming next. What did your daddy promise? He promised he'd stop hurting Mama. He promised a lot of times. Cole's hands clenched at his sides, not from anger alone, from recognition. Because Cole Brannigan had been that kind of man once. Not the hitting, never the hitting, but the breaking of promises. The chaos that drove Laura away. The night she begged him to stop fighting, stop disappearing, stop choosing the road over his family. And he'd say, I will, baby, I promise. And then he wouldn't. He wasn't Amber's husband, but he understood the machinery of destruction. He'd operated a different model of the same machine. Your daddy was wrong to do that, Cole said. And he was wrong to break those promises. But I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. Not every man who makes a promise breaks it. Some of us spend our whole lives breaking them, and then one day we decided to stop. I'm not going to ask you to trust me because I say so. I'm going to ask you to watch what I do. And if I do what I say, then you'll know. Maisie studied his face for a long time, those gray eyes moving across every scar, every line, reading him the way only children can, without politeness, without mercy, with nothing but raw instinct. Then she nodded, not with belief, with willingness. And for now, that was enough. A nurse came through the double doors. The little one's stable. IV fluids are in. She's responsive. She's asking for someone named Mai. Maisie was through those doors before the nurse finished the sentence. Cole stood alone in the waiting room. He braced one hand against the wall and dropped his head. His chest heaved once, twice. He bit down on his lip until he tasted copper. Then he straightened up, pulled out his phone, and called Preacher. How's Amber? I see you. Pneumonia in both lungs, malnourished, dehydrated, anemic. Doctor said another 24 hours without treatment and we'd be having a different conversation. Cole closed his eyes. And the injuries? Preacher was quiet for 3 seconds. That was a long time for a man who always had scripture ready. 2 healed fractures in her left wrist, a cracked rib that set wrong, old scarring on her back. Cole, this woman has been beaten systematically for years. This wasn't a man who lost his temper once. This was a man who made a habit of it. Cole pressed his forehead against the wall. Get everybody together. Officers in 30 minutes. And Will, start a collection. Every man empties his pockets. Already on it. The saddlebag was full in 4 minutes. The officers met in the hospital cafeteria. Buckshot, Diesel, Preacher, Stitch. Cole laid it out plain. This family has nothing. No money, no home, no safety net. The mother is in ICU. The 3-year-old almost died today. The 5-year-old has been acting as parent, provider, and protector. And there's a man out there, The father who did this, who beat his wife until she ran, who starved his own children by driving their mother to the breaking point. We're not leaving this town until this family is standing on solid ground. Diesel spoke first. Monk's already under the van's hood. Engine's got maybe 50 miles left. He called his shop. Flatbed's on the way. Good. Stitch, I need you to stay on Amber's case. Whatever the doctors need, you make it happen. Already done. I've got the attending's direct number. He's good. Young, but he listens. Preacher leaned forward. I made some calls. Deacon's sister-in-law is a family lawyer named Karen Price. She can have an emergency temporary restraining order drafted by morning. 500-foot perimeter. No contact. Violation means immediate arrest. She's also filing for emergency sole custody. The medical records alone will be enough for any judge. Cole nodded. Do it tonight. Buckshot hadn't said a word. He was staring at the table, jaw working. Cole watched him. Buckshot. He looked up. His eyes were red. I keep thinking about my little sister, boss. She was that age when my old man used to come home loaded. She used to hide in the closet and put her hands over her ears. 7 years old, hiding in a closet. And I was 12 and I couldn't stop it. I was too small. I was too scared. Cole put his hand on Buckshot's shoulder. You're not 12 anymore, and you're not scared. So let's do what we couldn't do then. Buckshot nodded hard, wiped his face with both hands. What do you need? Go back to that van. Check every inch. If that husband has been tracking them, there's a device somewhere. GPS, magnetic tracker, something. Find it. Buckshot was gone before Cole finished the sentence. 2 hours passed. Maisie fell asleep in a plastic chair in the pediatric ward, curled up next to Rosie's bed, her hand through the railing touching her sister's arm. Cole draped his leather vest over her like a blanket. She stirred but didn't wake. The crumpled paper bag was still clutched in her other hand. She hadn't let go of it once. Cole stood over them. 2 little girls, one sleeping with an IV, one sleeping in a chair, both blonde, both small, both broken in ways that would take years to understand. And Cole saw Emma, not as a ghost, not as a vision, just as a feeling, a weight behind his ribs that never left. His daughter would have been 24 now. She might have had children of her own. She might have been a mother. She might have been anything, but she was nothing, because Cole Brannigan had been in a cell when she needed him. He couldn't save Emma, but these two were right here, right in front of him, breathing, alive. And he was not in a cell. He was free. He was standing. At 11:47 p.m., Cole's phone rang. Unknown number. He stepped into the hallway, answered. Is this Cole Brannigan? A man's voice, hard, clipped, cold. Who's asking? My name is Derek Walker. I'm looking for my wife and kids, and I've got reason to believe you know where they are. Cole's blood went cold. He walked to the far end of the hallway, away from sleeping Maisie, away from the nurse's station, and pressed his back against the wall. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. A buddy of mine drives trucks through Beatty. He saw the ambulance. He saw the bikers. He saw my van behind that diner. Where is my family? Cole's voice dropped low, steady. The voice he used when things were about to get very real. They're not your family anymore, Derek. They're your victims. And if you come anywhere near them, you're going to find out exactly what 93 Hells Angels do to men who beat women and starve children. 3 seconds of silence. Then Derek Walker laughed. A low, ugly, confident sound. The laugh of a man who had always gotten what he wanted. You've got no idea who you're dealing with, old man. I'll see you real soon. The line went dead. Cole called Preacher immediately. Travis' situation. The husband knows. He's got a trucker friend who spotted the van. He's within driving distance. We double everything. 2 more men on every entrance. Nobody gets in without a name and a face we recognize. And get Buckshot to finish that sweep on the van. Now. Buckshot found it at 1:23 a.m. A commercial-grade magnetic GPS tracker tucked inside the rear wheel well of the minivan. Small, black, expensive. Not something a jealous husband buys at a pawn shop. Something a man buys when he's done this before, when tracking is part of the system. Buckshot held it up to Cole under the parking lot lights. This is how he found them every time. Every shelter, every motel. Every time Amber thought she was free, he was watching a little red dot on his phone. Cole took the tracker, turned it over in his hand. Then he looked at the highway. A long-haul rig was parked at the gas station across the road, engine idling, bound for El Paso. "Put it on that truck," Cole said. "Let Derek Walker chase a ghost all the way to Texas." Buckshot grinned for the first time all day, with pleasure. Cole walked back inside. The hospital was quiet. That deep, middle-of-the-night quiet where every sound carries. The hum of machines, the squeak of a nurse's shoes, the distant beep of a monitor. He turned the corner toward pediatrics and stopped. Maisie was awake, sitting up in the chair, his vest still draped over her shoulders. She was staring at him with those gray eyes, wide open, alert. She'd heard him talking on the phone. Maybe not the words, but the tone. Children don't need to hear the words. They hear the fear underneath. "Who called you?" Cole knelt in front of her. He'd promised not to lie, so he didn't. "Your daddy called, Maisie. He knows we're in Beatty. He doesn't know which hospital, and I'm going to make sure he never finds out." Maisie didn't flinch. She didn't cry. Her face went still in a way that no 5-year-old's face should ever go still. The face of a child who had heard bad news so many times, it had become routine. "He always finds us," she said. "Mama says we're safe, and then he finds us. We went to Grandma's house and he found us. We went to a motel in Tonopah and he found us. Mama drove 3 days. She drove at night so nobody would see. But then she got sick. 3 days. Amber Walker had driven 3 days, deathly ill, with 2 children in a rusted van, hiding behind dumpsters, driving only in the dark, trying to disappear from a man who kept finding her. Because he had a tracker on her van. Because he always had a tracker on her van. Every escape she'd ever tried was monitored. Every safe place she'd ever found was compromised before she arrived. Cole felt his jaw tighten until his teeth ached. "Your mama was alone those times," he said. "She's not alone anymore. She's got me, and she's got 92 other people who aren't going to let anything happen. Your daddy has never walked into a room like the one he's about to walk into." Maisie stared at him. Then she said something that stopped Cole's heart. "Don't hurt him." "What?" "Don't hurt my daddy. I know he's bad. I know what he did to Mama, but he's still my daddy. I just want him to go away." Cole Brannigan had been punched, stabbed, arrested, and shot at in his 54 years. None of it, not one single moment, hit as hard as a 5-year-old girl asking him not to hurt the man who had brutalized her mother. Because even after everything, the bruises, the broken bones, the hunger, the running, the fear, this child still loved her father. And that love, pure and unearned and completely undeserved, was the most devastating thing Cole had ever witnessed. He thought of Emma. He thought of all the years she might have loved him, despite everything he'd done wrong. He thought of Laura, who had loved him once and left, because love wasn't enough when the person you loved kept destroying everything around him. "Nobody's going to hurt him, Maisie," Cole said, and he meant it, even though every cell in his body screamed the opposite. "We're just going to make sure he can't hurt your mama again. That's all." Maisie looked at him for a long moment. Then she pulled his vest tighter around her shoulders, leaned back in the chair, and closed her eyes. Cole didn't move. He stayed kneeling on that cold hospital floor, watching this child fall asleep, wrapped in leather, in patches, in iron. The crumpled paper bag still in her hand, and he made a promise. Not out loud, not to Maisie, to Emma, to the daughter he'd failed 19 years ago. I see you, baby. I see you in her. And I'm not leaving this time. At 6:14 a.m., Preacher arrived with coffee and news. Grit and his team had locked the hospital down tight. 6 men rotating shifts. 2 at the main entrance, 2 outside Amber's room on the 3rd floor, 2 in the parking lot. The hospital security guard, a retired cop named Delgado, had handed Grit his personal cell number and a card. My shift ends at 11. If anything happens, you call that number. Not the hospital line, that one. Word had spread through Beatty overnight, the way small-town news moves, fast and unstoppable. Patty told her husband. Her husband told the auto shop. The auto shop told their wives. Their wives told the church group. By dawn, Pastor Nathan Cross drove to the hospital with a box of children's shoes. 3 pairs, different sizes. Small white sneakers with pink stripes. I heard about the family, the pastor said. I don't know the whole story, but I brought these, and there's more coming. My congregation started showing up at the church with bags, clothes, food, diapers, toys. Half a pickup truck full in 2 hours. Cole took the box. He carried it to the pediatric ward. Maisie woke. She saw Cole in the same chair. Still there, still awake. The smallest flicker crossed her face. Not a smile, not yet. Something quieter, something close to belief. Then she saw the shoes. She stared at them the way a child stares at something impossible, like they might vanish if she blinked. Those are for you, Cole said. For real? For real. She slid her cracked, blistered feet into the white sneakers with pink stripes. They fit. She stood. She bounced on her toes, and Maisie Walker smiled. The first real smile. A 5-year-old in new shoes smile. Pure, radiant, unguarded. They're so soft, she whispered. Can I show Rosie? They walked to the pediatric ward together. Rosie was awake, sitting up, IV in her tiny arm, juice box in hand. Her eyes locked on Maisie and lit up like sunrise. My. Maisie ran to the bed, climbed up, held out her feet. Rosie, look, shoes, real shoes. And there's food, so much food. And this man, Mr. Cole, he's helping us. He's helping Mama too. And there's a whole bunch of people and they're all being nice and nobody's yelling and nobody's... She stopped, the dam breaking. Everything she'd held back for days, weeks, maybe months, pouring out in a flood she couldn't control. She stopped because she saw Rosie's face change. Rosie wasn't looking at the shoes. She was looking at the tears streaming down Maisie's cheeks. My, crying, Rosie said. No, I'm not. These are happy ones. Cole stood in the doorway. He gripped the frame with one hand and pressed the other against his chest. Behind him, Buckshot leaned against the wall, arms crossed, jaw tight, blinking hard. Diesel stood at the end of the hallway with his phone in his hand, the call to his wife still open, and she was crying on the other end because he'd told her everything. And somewhere out on a Nevada highway, a black Dodge Ram was heading east, following a GPS signal that was riding in the back of a long-haul rig bound for Texas. But Derek Walker wasn't stupid, and he wasn't going to chase a ghost for long. Karen Price filed the emergency temporary restraining order at 8:47 a.m. By 9:15, a judge had reviewed the medical records. 2 healed fractures in the left wrist, a cracked rib that set wrong, scarring on the back, malnutrition of both children, and signed it without hesitation. 500-foot perimeter, no contact. Violation meant immediate arrest. Emergency sole custody to Amber Walker, effective immediately. Preacher delivered the news to Cole in the hospital cafeteria. Cole was on his 4th cup of coffee. He hadn't slept in over 30 hours. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw was clenched, and the scar running down his face looked deeper than usual, the way it always did when he was running on fury and no rest. It's done, Preacher said. Karen says the medical evidence alone would be enough for any judge in the state. She's already filing for permanent sole custody. The hearing is set for 3 weeks out. Good. What about Derek? The GPS tracker is still moving east. Last ping was outside Tonopah. If he's following it, he's headed the wrong direction. Cole shook his head. He's not following it. Not anymore. A man like Derek Walker doesn't chase a signal for 12 hours without checking. He figured it out by now, which means he's coming back. Preacher sat down across from him. You think he'll come here? I know he will, because I heard his voice on that phone. That wasn't a man making threats. That was a man who believes he owns those people. And men like that don't stop, not because of a phone call, not because of a piece of paper. They stop when they walk into something they can't beat. Then we'll be that something, Preacher said. Cole looked at him. Will, I need you to understand something. That girl asked me not to hurt him. She looked me in the eye and said, "Don't hurt my daddy." And I told her I wouldn't. So whatever happens today, we do this clean. No fists, no threats, no violence. We make him understand that it's over, and we do it without breaking my promise to that kid. Preacher studied Cole's face. That's a hard line to walk, brother. I know, but I gave her my word. Then we walk it. Cole stood. He tossed his coffee cup in the trash and headed for Amber's room on the 3rd floor. Grit was outside the door, standing like a statue. Cole nodded to him and went in. Amber was sitting up in bed. She was still pale, still gaunt, still hooked to an IV, but her eyes were clear for the first time. She was eating Jell-O with a plastic spoon, and when Cole walked in, she stopped mid-bite and looked at him the way a woman looks at someone she can't quite figure out. "You're still here," she said. "Told you I would be. People say a lot of things." Cole pulled a chair to the bedside and sat. "I've got something to tell you, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Derek called me last night. He knows you're in Beatty. He doesn't know which hospital, but a man like him will figure it out. It's a small town. There aren't many options." Amber's hand started shaking. The spoon rattled against the Jell-O cup. She put it down. Her face didn't crumble the way Cole expected. Instead, it hardened. The terror was there, underneath, but on top was something else. Exhaustion. The bone-deep exhaustion of a woman who had been running for so long that the idea of running again was worse than the thing she was running from. "How did he find us?" "GPS, tracker, magnetic, inside the rear wheel well of your van. He's been tracking every move you've made." Amber closed her eyes. Her lips pressed together so tight they went white. Of course he had a tracker. I checked the car before we left. I looked under the seats, in the glove box, behind the mirrors. I didn't know to look in the wheel well. I didn't know." "You couldn't have known," Cole said. "I should have." She opened her eyes and they were bright with fury. Not at Cole, at herself, at the impossible game she'd been forced to play. "I left 3 times before this. 3 times. First time, I went to my mother's house in Henderson. He showed up in 2 days. Kicked in the front door. My mother called the police. They came, took a report, and left. Derek sat in his truck outside for 6 hours until they stopped patrolling. Then he came back in. Second time, I went to a shelter in Las Vegas. He found us in a week. Showed up in the parking lot, clean shirt, tears in his eyes. Told the intake counselor I was mentally unstable, that I had postpartum psychosis, that I'd kidnapped his children. She almost believed him. They all almost believe him. Her voice broke, not from sadness, from rage. The third time I drove to Tonopah, paid cash for a motel room, used a fake name. 3 days, that's all I got. 3 days before he was standing in the parking lot. He didn't yell. He didn't hit me. Not there. He smiled and said, "Get in the car, Sarah." He always calls me Sarah when he's angry. My name is Amber. He knows that. He calls me Sarah because that's the name he decided I should have. Because in his mind, he gets to decide who I am. Cole listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't nod. He just listened because this woman hadn't been listened to in a very long time. So this time Amber continued, I waited. I planned. I saved $11 in coins inside Rosie's diaper bag because he checked my wallet every night. $11. I stole the car keys off the counter while he was in the shower. I put the girls in the van at 3 in the morning. I drove with the headlights off until I hit the highway. And I just drove. For 3 days. I slept in parking lots. I fed the girls crackers and water. And then I got sick. And then I couldn't drive anymore. And then Maisie, her voice shattered. My baby walked into a diner full of strangers because I couldn't get out of the car. My 5-year-old had to beg for food because her mother was too sick to stand up. What kind of mother lets that happen? Cole leaned forward. The kind who drove 3 days with pneumonia to keep her kids safe. The kind who planned an escape on $11 in loose change. The kind whose daughter walked into a room full of bikers without flinching because she learned courage from watching her mother survive the unsurvivable. That's what kind. Amber stared at him. Her chin trembled once. Then she steadied it, forced it still. The reflex of a woman who had trained herself not to cry in front of anyone, because crying was a weakness, and weakness was an invitation. He'll come, she said. He'll find this hospital. He'll walk in with his pressed shirt and his blue eyes and his perfect story, and people will believe him. They always believe him. He is the most convincing liar I have ever met in my life. Then it's a good thing, Cole said, that I've been lied to by professionals my entire life. I know what it looks like, and I know what it smells like. He's not walking past me. Amber reached out and took his hand. Her grip was weak but deliberate. Why? Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Cole didn't answer right away. He looked at their hands. Hers, thin, bruised, the knuckles still swollen from old injuries. His, scarred, calloused, tattooed, the hands of a man who had broken things his entire life. Because 20 years ago I had a family and I lost them, he said. Not the way you lost yours. I didn't hit anyone, but I was selfish, reckless. I chose the road over my wife and my daughter every single time. My wife begged me to stop. I promised I would. I didn't. She took my daughter and left, and my daughter got sick. Brain tumor. She was 5 years old, and I was in a prison cell when she died. I was locked behind a concrete wall when my little girl needed me. My wife called from a hospital payphone. She said she's gone, Cole, and I dropped the phone and sat on the floor for 5 hours. His voice was steady. Not because the pain was gone, because he had carried it for so long that it had become structural, part of his bones, part of his breath. So when your daughter walked into that diner and asked for leftovers for her sister, I didn't see a stranger's kid. I saw Emma. I saw every meal I never bought her, every night I wasn't there, every promise I broke. I can't fix what I did to my daughter. She's gone, and I can't get her back. But I can fix this, and I'm going to. Amber held his hand tighter, not with strength, with recognition. Two broken people holding on to each other across a gulf of pain that neither one of them had chosen, but both of them understood. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when it's done. At 2:47 that afternoon, a black Dodge Ram with tinted windows pulled into the hospital parking lot. It circled once, slowly. Then it parked in the far corner, engine running. Wrench spotted it first. He called Cole immediately. Black Ram, tinted windows, far corner of the lot, engine still running. He's sitting there, watching. How long? 3 minutes. He hasn't moved. Cole hung up. He looked at Preacher. It's time. They walked out together. Cole in front, Preacher half a step behind. Wrench and Colt flanked wide, moving along the edges of the lot, cutting off the exit routes without making it obvious. Grit stayed at the hospital entrance with 2 men. Nobody was getting through that door. Cole walked straight to the driver's side. Steady, unhurried. The walk of a man who had been in enough confrontations to know that speed shows fear, and fear shows weakness. He stopped 3 feet from the door and waited. The window rolled down. Derek Walker was younger than Cole expected. 33, clean-shaven, strong jaw, blonde hair combed neat, pressed polo shirt, khakis, blue eyes, the same blue as Maisie's. But where Maisie's eyes carried courage, Derek's carried something else, something calculated. The eyes of a man who had spent his entire life learning how to arrange his face to get what he wanted. "You Brannigan?" "I am." Derek scanned the bikers, counted them, assessed them, and then he smiled. Not nervous, confident. The smile of a man who had talked his way out of everything his entire life and fully expected to do it again. "Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sarah, Amber, my wife, she's not well, mentally, postpartum depression, paranoid episodes. She took my kids in the middle of the night. I've been worried sick. I just want to see them. I just want to know they're safe." He delivered it perfectly. Every word measured, every pause calculated. His eyes glistened on cue, tears forming but not falling. A man who could have won an Oscar. Cole didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react. "You done?" Derek blinked. The first crack. People usually bought it by now. "Excuse me?" "I asked if you're done. Because I've got a woman upstairs with 2 healed fractures in her wrist, a cracked rib that's set wrong, and scars on her back. I've got a 5-year-old who walked into a diner barefoot to beg for scraps because her mother was too sick to stand. And I've got a 3-year-old who almost died of dehydration in a car seat behind a dumpster. So I'm going to ask you one more time, are you done with the act, or do you want to keep going?" The mask shifted. The smile tightened. The manufactured tears dried up in an instant, like someone had flipped a switch. The posture changed. The shoulders squared. And underneath the polo shirt and the combed hair and the clean-shaven jaw, something cold and hard rose to the surface. "Those are my kids. Mine. You have no legal right to keep them from me." "You're right, I don't. But the emergency restraining order filed this morning does. 500 feet. You're already in violation." Derek went still. His jaw worked. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "That's not possible. Amber signed it at noon yesterday. A judge approved it at 1:15. A copy was emailed to Beatty PD at 1:30. If I call them right now, you leave this parking lot in handcuffs." Derek's face was fully exposed now. The charm was gone. The concern was gone. The loving father was gone. What was left was rage, white hot, compressed, the kind that lives in a man's chest like a pilot light, always burning, always ready. "You think a piece of paper stops me?" He leaned forward. His voice dropped. "I've dealt with cops. I've dealt with lawyers. I've dealt with every shelter and hotline and restraining order in the state of Nevada. They don't work. I always get my family back. Always. Not this time." "What makes you so sure?" Cole took one step forward. One step. Close enough that Derek could see every line, every scar, every year of hard road etched into his face. Close enough to smell the leather and the road dust and the coffee. Close enough that there was no room for performance. Because those shelters and cops and lawyers had jobs to go back to. Shifts that ended. Other cases. Other priorities. I don't. I've got nothing but time and 92 men who feel the same way. You want to test that? Go ahead. File a motion. Hire a lawyer. Show up in court with your pressed shirt and your tears. We'll be there. Every single day. Every hearing. Every step. Cole's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. And when the court gives Amber full custody, and they will, we'll be at her door. And when you drive past the school, we'll be in the parking lot. And when you call from a blocked number at 2 in the morning, we'll be on the other end. You are not dealing with the system anymore, Derek. You're dealing with us. And we don't clock out. Derek's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Not from fear, not entirely. From the unfamiliar sensation of standing in front of someone who wasn't afraid of him. His entire machinery, the charm, the intimidation, the legal manipulation, the crocodile tears. All of it was designed for people who could be scared or fooled or exhausted into giving up. Cole Brannigan couldn't be any of those things. A man who has already lost everything is the most dangerous thing on earth to a bully, because there's nothing left to threaten, nothing left to take. Derek looked past Cole at the hospital, at Preacher standing with his Bible in one hand and his other hand free, at Wrench, arms crossed, eyes dead calm, at Colt, who hadn't blinked once since the window rolled down, at the men by the entrance, at the men in the parking lot, at the wall of leather and iron that stood between him and the family he believed he owned. "You're making a mistake," Derek said, but his voice was smaller, a half step back from where it had been. "No, I made my mistakes 20 years ago. This is me fixing them." Derek sat there, engine idling, hands still shaking. Cole could see the calculation happening behind those blue eyes, the risk assessment, the cost-benefit analysis that every predator runs when the prey suddenly isn't prey anymore. Then Derek Walker did something he had never done in his entire life. He put the truck in reverse. He backed out slowly, deliberately, maintaining eye contact with Cole through the open window the entire time. At the edge of the lot, just before the exit, the truck stopped. The window was still down. "This isn't over," Derek said. "Yeah, it is. You just don't know it yet." The black Dodge Ram turned onto the highway and headed east. Cole watched it until it was nothing but a shimmer in the heat. Then he exhaled, long and slow. The breath he'd been holding since the phone rang at 11:47 the night before. Preacher walked up beside him. "You think he's gone?" "For now. Men like him don't quit after one try. He'll hire a lawyer. He'll file motions. He'll try to look like the victim in front of a judge. But he saw something today he's never seen before. He saw a wall he can't climb, and that's going to eat at him. And if he comes back, then he comes back. And we'll be here." Cole turned and walked back toward the hospital. His boots were heavy on the asphalt. His body ached from no sleep and too much coffee, and the kind of emotional weight that doesn't show up on a scale, but breaks a man's back just the same. He pushed through the hospital doors, walked past the nurse's station, turned the corner toward pediatrics. Maisie was standing in the hallway, waiting, those gray eyes locked on him. She'd been watching through the window. She'd seen the black truck. She'd seen her father, and she'd seen Cole standing between them. "Is he gone?" she asked. "He's gone. Is he coming back?" Cole knelt down. "I don't know, Maisie. I'm not going to lie to you, but I know this. If he does come back, he's going to find the same thing he found today. Me, standing right here. And I'm not going anywhere." Maisie looked at him for a long time, those gray eyes reading him the way they always did, without mercy, without pretense, with nothing but the raw, unfiltered instinct of a child who had learned the hard way that words are cheap and only actions count. Then she stepped forward, put her arms around his neck, and held on, not crying this time, just holding. The way you hold something you've decided to believe in, carefully, tightly, with everything you've got. Cole held her back, and over her shoulder, through the window of the pediatric ward, he could see Rosie sitting up in bed, waving at them with a juice box in her hand, and Stitch sitting beside her, reading from a picture book, and Buckshot in the corner pretending to sleep but watching everything, and the afternoon light falling across all of it like something almost too fragile to name. 3 days after Derek Walker's truck disappeared down that highway, Amber Walker took her first steps out of bed. Stitch was beside her, one hand on her elbow, the other on her back. Amber's legs shook so badly the IV stand rattled against the floor. She made it 4 steps before she had to stop, gripping the bed rail, breathing hard, sweat already breaking across her forehead. 4 steps, Stitch said. Yesterday it was 2. Tomorrow it'll be 6. Amber shook her head. I can't even walk to the bathroom. How am I supposed to take care of 2 kids? One step at a time. Same way you drove 3 days with pneumonia. Same way Maisie walked into that diner. You walkers don't quit. It's genetic. Amber almost laughed. Almost. Her mouth twitched in a way that suggested she'd forgotten how. Then her face tightened. Has he called again? Stitch didn't flinch. Number. Coles had men watching the road in and out of Beatty around the clock. Nothing. Karen Price says Derek's lawyer filed a motion to contest the restraining order. Hearings in 2 weeks. But Karen's not worried. She says the medical records alone will bury him. Amber sat back on the bed. Her hands were trembling. Not from the walking. He'll show up in court looking perfect, clean, charming. He'll cry. He'll talk about his children. He'll say, I'm unstable. He'll say, I'm the one who's dangerous. And the judge will look at the x-rays of your wrist and ask him how a woman breaks the same bone twice by accident, Stitch said. Amber, I've seen this play out 100 times in the ER. Men like Derek are terrifying in a living room. In a courtroom, with evidence and witnesses, and a lawyer who knows what she's doing, they fall apart. Because the one place their charm doesn't work is in front of someone who's seen the damage. Amber looked at her. You really believe that? I know it, because I lived it. Amber's eyes widened. Stitch sat on the edge of the bed. She rolled up her left sleeve. A scar ran from her wrist to her elbow. Thin, white, old. I was 22, Stitch said. His name was Brian, pre-med student, brilliant, funny. Everyone loved him. He broke my arm in 2 places the first year. By the second year, I was making excuses to the ER staff I would later work beside. It took me 3 years to leave. And when I did, I walked out with a trash bag of clothes and a car with a cracked windshield and nothing else. And I was terrified every single day for a year. But I left, and I became a nurse, and I joined this club, and now I spend my life making sure what happened to me doesn't kill somebody else. Why didn't you ever tell me? Amber asked. Because you didn't need my story. You needed your own. You needed to know that you got yourself out. You drove 3 days. You survived. And your daughter walked into a room full of strangers and saved your life. That's your story, Amber, not mine. Amber reached for Stitch's hand. Their fingers laced together. 2 women, 2 scars, 2 different roads to the same place. Down the hall, Maisie was causing problems. She had discovered that the hospital had a cafeteria, and the cafeteria had a pancake station, and the pancake station had unlimited syrup. She had eaten 4 pancakes in 20 minutes and was working on a 5th when Buckshot found her sitting on a cafeteria chair with her feet swinging, syrup on her chin, syrup on her new shoes, syrup on the table, and a look of pure defiance on her face. Kid, Buckshot said, you're going to explode. I've never had pancakes before, not real ones. Mama used to make them with water and flour, but they didn't taste like this. Buckshot sat down across from her. He stole a piece of her pancake. She slapped his hand. He grinned. She grinned back. And for a moment, Buckshot saw his little sister again, not hiding in a closet, sitting in a cafeteria, eating pancakes, grinning. Maisie, he said, when you get out of here, do you know what you want to do first? She thought about it seriously, the way 5-year-olds think about serious things. Chin down, brow furrowed, like the fate of the world depends on the answer. I want to go to school, she said. I've never been to school. Mama was going to take me, but then Daddy got mad and we had to move again. And then we had to move again. And then Mama got sick. But I can already read some words. Mama taught me. I can read stop and exit and open and help. Buckshot stared at her. Those 4 words, stop, exit, open, help. The vocabulary of a woman on the run, teaching her daughter the only words that mattered, the words that might save her life. He swallowed hard. You're going to go to school, Maisie. I promise you that. She looked at him with those gray eyes, that same searching look she gave everyone. You sound like Mr. Cole. He promises things too. Does he keep them? So far, 2 floors up, Cole was on the phone with Karen Price. Derek's lawyer is good, Karen said. His name is Marcus Webb. He's out of Las Vegas. Expensive. Aggressive. He's already filed 3 motions. 1 to dismiss the restraining order, 1 for emergency visitation, and 1 claiming Amber is an unfit mother who kidnapped the children. Cole gripped the phone tighter. Unfit mother. She drove 3 days with pneumonia to protect those kids. I know that. You know that. But Webb is going to argue that a fit mother doesn't live in a car behind a dumpster with no food and no medical care for her children. He's going to flip the narrative, make Derek the concerned father, and Amber the unstable, irresponsible one. It's a standard playbook for abusers with money and good lawyers. What do we need? Everything, Karen said. Medical records from every hospital Amber's ever visited, police reports from every call, testimony from the shelter in Las Vegas, character witnesses, and most importantly, we need Amber strong enough to sit in that courtroom and tell her story without breaking. Because Webb is going to come at her hard. He's going to try to make her crack on the stand. That's his strategy. Overwhelm and destabilize. She won't crack, Cole said. You sound sure. I've watched her daughter hold a family together on 4 pancakes and a pair of second-hand shoes. That kid didn't get that from nowhere. Her mother is the strongest person in this story. She just doesn't know it yet. Karen was quiet for a moment. Cole, I have to ask, and I'm asking as her lawyer, what's your stake in this? The court is going to want to know why a Hells Angels chapter president is personally involved in a domestic violence custody case. Derek's lawyer will use it. He'll paint you as dangerous, as a criminal element influencing a vulnerable woman. I need to know what to say. Cole stared at the wall. Tell them the truth. Tell them a 5-year-old girl walked into a diner and asked for leftovers for her sister. Tell them I knelt down and looked into her eyes and saw my own daughter who died 19 years ago. Tell them I'm a man who failed his family once and swore he'd never fail another one. And if that's not good enough for the court, then the court can come talk to me directly. Karen exhaled. That'll work. That'll actually work. They spent the next 2 weeks building the case. Karen was relentless. She subpoenaed medical records from 3 hospitals in Nevada. She tracked down the intake report from the Las Vegas shelter. She got a statement from Amber's mother in Henderson confirming Derek had kicked in her front door. She found a neighbor from their old apartment complex in Reno who had called the police twice and been told both times that it was a domestic matter. Stitch gathered every piece of medical evidence from the hospital in Beatty. The x-rays, the old fractures, the defensive wounds, Rosie's malnutrition report, Maisie's cracked and blistered feet documented in the admission photos. She compiled it into a folder so thorough that Karen called it the most damning file she'd ever held. Preacher organized the brothers. They took shifts watching the apartment Karen had arranged for Amber through Pastor Cross's congregation. Small place in Pahrump. 1 bedroom, kitchen, a bathroom with a door that locked. To most people, nothing special. To Amber Walker, it was a palace. The day Amber was discharged, she walked out of the hospital on her own 2 feet, Rosie on her hip, Maisie holding her hand. 14 Hells Angels rode escort around Diesel's van in formation. Amber sat in the back, watching the motorcycles through the window, and she shook her head slowly. What? Stitch asked. 2 months ago, I was hiding behind a dumpster, praying nobody would find us. Now I've got a motorcycle escort. How does that happen? It happens because your daughter is braver than everyone on those bikes combined, Stitch said, and she gets it from you. The apartment was already furnished. Pastor Cross and his congregation had filled it in 3 days. Bed, table, chairs, dishes, towels, a bookshelf stacked with children's books, toys in a plastic bin, diapers, formula, a bag of groceries on the counter. A woman from the church who ran a grocery store had offered Amber a part-time job. Flexible hours, Cash if she needed it. No questions asked. Amber stood in the doorway and didn't move. She just stood there, one hand on the frame, Rosie on her hip, staring at the small apartment like she couldn't process what she was seeing. "It's yours," Cole said, standing behind her, "for as long as you need it." "I don't understand," Amber whispered. "I don't understand any of this. 3 weeks ago I was dying in a parking lot and my daughter was begging for scraps. Now I have an apartment and a job and a lawyer and people who—" She stopped. Her voice broke. "People who care. How is this real?" Maisie tugged her hand. "Mama, come look. There's a bed. A real bed. And there's books. Mama, there's so many books." Amber let Maisie pull her inside. Rosie spotted a stuffed rabbit in the toy bin and lunged for it with both arms. Maisie ran to the bookshelf and started touching the spines, one by one, reading the titles she could sound out, whispering them like prayers. Preacher stepped up beside Cole in the doorway. He held out a thick envelope. Every man emptied his pockets. Some of them emptied them twice. Monk put in his whole paycheck, said his wife already approved it. Cole looked at the envelope. How much? $11,437. Cole took the envelope and handed it to Amber. She opened it. She counted. And then she sat on the floor of her new apartment and cried. Not the silent, controlled tears of a woman who had learned to hide her pain. Real tears. Loud, messy, shaking tears. The kind that come when something inside you that's been locked for years finally breaks open. Maisie was beside her in an instant, patting her back, stroking her hair. "It's okay, Mama. These are happy ones, remember? I told you, happy ones." Amber pulled her daughter into her arms and held on so tight that Maisie squeaked. Rosie crawled over with the stuffed rabbit and wedged herself into the pile. And the three of them sat on the floor of that apartment, tangled together, crying and laughing and holding on. And Cole Brannigan stood in the doorway watching and felt something shift in his chest that had been frozen for 19 years. Not a crack this time, a thaw. The custody hearing came on a Tuesday morning. Karen Price wore a navy suit and carried a file 3 inches thick. Amber wore a dress that Stitch had bought her. Simple, blue, her hair pulled back, her bruises faded but still faintly visible on her cheekbone. She sat straight. Her hands were shaking under the table, but her eyes were steady. Derek Walker walked in looking exactly as Amber had predicted. Clean, polished, pressed suit, blue tie. His lawyer, Marcus Webb, was beside him, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. Derek sat down, looked across the courtroom at Amber, and offered a sad, gentle smile. The performance had begun. But then Derek scanned the gallery, and the smile wavered. Cole Brannigan sat in the first row, Preacher beside him, Diesel beside Preacher, Buckshot beside Diesel, Stitch beside Buckshot, and behind them, filling every seat in the gallery, 26 Hell's Angels in clean shirts and pressed jeans, sitting in silence, arms folded, watching. Webb called Derek to the stand first. Derek spoke softly, humbly. He talked about how much he loved his children, how worried he'd been, how Amber had taken them in the middle of the night without warning. He said he'd made mistakes. He admitted to arguments. He said he was in counseling. He looked at the judge with glistening eyes and said, "I just want my family back, Your Honor. I just want to hold my girls." It was flawless, rehearsed to perfection. Every beat, every pause, every tremor in his voice designed to create the exact portrait he wanted the judge to see. Karen Price stood up. "Mr. Walker," she said, "you mentioned arguments. Can you describe those arguments?" "Verbal disagreements. Every couple has them." "Did those verbal disagreements ever result in your wife sustaining injuries?" "No, absolutely not." Karen opened her file. She placed an X-ray on the projector. "Mr. Walker, this is an X-ray of your wife's left wrist, taken 14 months ago at Desert Springs Medical Center. It shows 2 fractures. Can you explain how your wife broke her wrist in 2 places?" She fell. She tripped on the stairs. Karen placed a second image. This is an X-ray showing a cracked rib, taken 9 months ago at Valley Hospital in Las Vegas. Different hospital, same patient. Can you explain this injury? Derek's jaw tightened. She's clumsy. She's always been clumsy. Karen placed a third image. Photographs of Amber's back, scarring visible even in the courtroom lighting. And these, Mr. Walker? Is your wife clumsy enough to develop a pattern of scarring consistent with being struck with a belt? Webb objected. The judge overruled. Derek's composure cracked. Not visibly, not to anyone who wasn't watching carefully, but Cole was watching, and he saw it. The flicker behind the eyes, the tightening of the jaw, the way Derek's right hand curled into a fist under the table, then slowly forced itself open. The machinery of control working overtime. Karen called Amber to the stand. Amber walked up, sat down, placed her shaking hands in her lap, and looked at the judge. She told her story. All of it. The first time Derek hit her. The first time she tried to leave. The front door kicked in at her mother's house. The shelter in Las Vegas. The motel in Tonopah. The 3-day drive with pneumonia. The parking lot behind the dumpsters. Maisie walking into the diner. She didn't cry. Her voice cracked twice, but she didn't cry. She stared straight ahead and delivered each fact like a stone she was laying down, one after another, building a wall that Derek Walker could never climb. Webb cross-examined her aggressively. He questioned her mental state, her fitness as a mother, why she hadn't sought medical care sooner, why she'd chosen to live in a van rather than seek help. Because every time I sought help, he found me, Amber said. Every shelter, every motel, every family member's home. He had a GPS tracker on my van. He always knew where I was. The only way I could protect my children was to disappear. And I almost died trying. The judge looked at Derek. Derek looked at the table. Karen called one final witness, Cole Brannigan. He walked to the stand. Every biker in the gallery sat up straighter. Cole placed his hand on the Bible. He swore to tell the truth. Mr. Brannigan, Karen said, can you tell the court how you came to be involved with this family? Cole looked at the judge. A 5-year-old girl walked into a diner where I was eating with 92 other men. She had no shoes. She was wearing a torn dress. She held a paper bag. She walked past every single one of us without flinching and asked me if she could take the leftovers for her sister. Her sister was 3 years old, severely dehydrated, barely conscious in a car seat behind a dumpster. Her mother was unconscious at the wheel with pneumonia. And the first thing that mother said when she woke up was, "Don't take my kids and don't call him." The courtroom was silent. Webb stood. Mr. Brannigan, you have a criminal record, do you not? I do. Aggravated assault. 14 months at Ely State Prison. That's correct. And you believe you're a suitable person to be involved in the welfare of 2 young children? Cole looked at him, then at the judge. I'm not here because I think I'm suitable. I'm here because a 5-year-old girl walked barefoot across burning asphalt to save her family, and I happened to be in the room. I'm here because I failed my own daughter 20 years ago, and I've spent every day since trying to earn back something I can never get back. I'm not asking this court to trust me. I'm asking this court to look at those medical records and protect those children from the man who created them. The judge called a recess. It lasted 11 minutes. When she returned, she read her ruling. Full sole custody to Amber Walker. Derek Walker ordered into a batterer's intervention program. All contact with the children suspended pending completion of the program and a full psychological evaluation. Violation of any term meant immediate arrest. Derek's face went white. Webb put a hand on his shoulder. Derek shrugged it off. He stood. He looked across the courtroom at Amber. And for 1 second, the mask fell completely. What was underneath was not sadness, not remorse, not love. It was ownership. The raw, naked fury of a man who had just been told that the things he believed belonged to him were no longer his. Then he looked at Cole, and Cole looked back, steady, unblinking, the same look he'd given him in the parking lot, the look that said, "I'm not going anywhere." Derek Walker turned and walked out of the courtroom. His footsteps echoed off the tile. The door swung shut behind him. Amber collapsed forward in her chair. Her hands covered her face. Her shoulders shook. Stitch was beside her in a second, arms around her, holding her up. Maisie, who had been sitting with Buckshot in the hallway, came running in. She climbed into her mother's lap and pressed both hands against Amber's cheeks. "Mama, what happened? Did we win?" Amber looked at her daughter through tears and a smile that broke and rebuilt itself 3 times before it held. "Yeah, baby, we won." Maisie threw her arms around Amber's neck. Rosie, sitting on Diesel's lap in the gallery, clapped her hands because everyone else was smiling, and she didn't know why, but she wanted to be part of it. Diesel bounced her on his knee, and his eyes were streaming, and he didn't care who saw. Cole sat on the witness stand. He hadn't moved. He was looking at his hands, scarred, tattooed, the hands of a man who had broken things his whole life. And today those hands had helped put something back together. Preacher walked up to him, placed a hand on his shoulder. Didn't say a word, didn't need to. Cole nodded once. Then he stood, straightened his vest, and walked toward the hallway where Maisie was waiting with syrup stains on her shoes and a smile so wide it could have lit up every dark road in Nevada. Cole split the charity ride for the first time in 19 years. He sent Diesel with 50 men to Long Beach to deliver the hospital check. The rest stayed in Beatty. When some of the brothers questioned it, Preacher shut it down with 6 words. "This family is the real ride." Nobody argued after that. The first week in the apartment was the hardest. Amber couldn't sleep. Every sound woke her. A car door slamming in the parking lot, a neighbor's television through the wall, the creak of the building settling at night. She'd sit up in bed, heart hammering, eyes wide, scanning the dark for a shape that wasn't there. Stitch stayed the first 3 nights, sleeping on the couch with her boots on and her phone in her hand. Not because she thought Derek would come, because Amber needed to know someone was between her and the door. On the 4th night, Amber told her to go home. "You need sleep, Stitch." "I'm fine, Grace. Go home. You've done enough. I have to learn to sleep in this apartment by myself. If I can't do that, I can't do anything." Stitch looked at her for a long time. Then she stood, pulled on her jacket, and stopped at the door. "You call me. Any hour. Any reason. Even if it's just because the building makes a noise you don't like. You call." Amber nodded. Stitch left. And Amber Walker sat alone in her apartment for the first time in 3 weeks and listened to the silence and didn't run from it. Maisie started kindergarten in September. Buckshot bought her a backpack, purple with silver stars. He drove 45 minutes to a Target in Pahrump to find the right one because Maisie had mentioned once, that she liked stars. He showed up at the apartment the night before her first day and handed it to her like it was nothing. "Found this, thought you could use it." Maisie held the backpack with both hands. She ran her fingers across the stars. She looked up at Buckshot with those gray eyes that had seen too much for 5 years and not enough of this. "It's got stars on it," she said. "Yeah, I noticed. Stars are my favorite." "I didn't know that." She smiled. The second real smile Cole had ever seen from her. Then she put the backpack on, tightened both straps, and walked around the apartment wearing it for the rest of the evening. She wore it to dinner. She wore it while brushing her teeth. Amber had to negotiate for 15 minutes to get her to take it off for bed. The next morning, Amber walked Maisie to the elementary school 3 blocks away. Rosie was on her hip. Maisie was wearing her white sneakers with pink stripes and her purple backpack with silver stars, and she was holding Amber's hands so tight her knuckles were white. At the school entrance, Maisie stopped. She looked at the building. She looked at the other children streaming in, laughing, shoving each other, carrying lunchboxes. She looked at their shoes and their clean clothes and their parents kissing them goodbye. and something crossed her face. Not fear, something worse. Doubt. The quiet, corrosive doubt of a child who wonders if she belongs in the same world as everyone else. Amber knelt down. "Hey, look at me." Maisie looked. "You belong here, you hear me? You walked into a diner full of 93 bikers and asked for help. You can walk into a kindergarten class. But what if they don't like me? Then they're missing out, because you are the bravest person I have ever known. And I'm not just saying that because I'm your mama. I'm saying it because it's true." Maisie's chin trembled. Then she straightened her backpack straps, took a breath, and walked through the door. She didn't look back. Amber stood on the sidewalk watching until the door closed, and then she pressed her face against Rosie's hair and cried. Not from sadness, from the overwhelming, staggering relief of watching her daughter do something normal. Something every 5-year-old was supposed to do. Something that 3 weeks ago had been impossible. Cole visited every month. He'd ride down from wherever the road had taken him, park his Harley outside the apartment, and knock. Maisie answered the door every time, always first, always running. She'd throw herself at his legs like a guided missile, and he'd catch her and lift her up, and she'd grab his face with both hands and inspect the scar like she was checking to make sure it was still there. "Does it still hurt?" "Nah, it's just decoration now," she'd laugh. And the sound of that laugh did something to Cole Brannigan that 19 years of grief and penance and hard riding had never managed. It made him feel like he deserved to be alive. They'd eat lunch. Amber would cook. Nothing fancy. Pasta, chicken, grilled cheese. But she cooked it in her own kitchen, on her own stove, in her own apartment. And she set the table with dishes that belonged to her. And she sat down with her children and ate without flinching at every sound. That was everything. Cole would help Maisie with her homework after lunch. The kid was sharp. She could already read full sentences by October. Her teacher sent home a note saying Maisie was the most determined student she'd ever taught. "She reads like she's angry at the words for not making sense fast enough," the note said. Amber hung it on the refrigerator and looked at it every morning. Rosie would climb into Cole's lap after homework. She'd touch his scar with one finger and say, "Ow," the same way she did every single time. And every single time Cole would say, "I'm okay, sweetheart." And every time he said it, he meant it a little more. One afternoon, Amber stood at the kitchen window watching Cole in the living room. Maisie was reading to him from a picture book, sounding out every word, slamming her finger against the page like she was accusing the letters of something. Rosie was asleep on his chest, mouth open, one hand gripping his shirt. Cole's eyes were closed. Not sleeping, just being there, just existing in a room where he was needed and wanted and present. Amber pressed her hand against her heart. She breathed in without pain for the first time in 6 years. No rattling, no wincing, no flinching, just breath. Just air-filling lungs that had healed in a body that was learning it was allowed to take up space in the world. Stitch called it recovery. Amber called it something else. She called it beginning. The months passed. Amber's job at the grocery store became full-time. She was good at it, reliable, steady. The owner, Mrs. Chen, told her she had the best work ethic of anyone she'd ever hired. Amber laughed and said, "When you've survived what I've survived, stocking shelves feels like a vacation." Karen Price called in November with an update. Derek had completed exactly 0 sessions of his batterer's intervention program. He'd been ordered to attend 26. He attended 1, walked out after 40 minutes. His lawyer filed a motion claiming the program was biased. The judge denied it. Derek was now in contempt of court. A warrant had been issued. Karen's voice was careful on the phone. "Amber, I want you to hear this from me before you hear it from anyone else. Derek was arrested 2 weeks ago in Reno, not for the contempt warrant, for assaulting his girlfriend." Amber was quiet for 10 seconds. "Girlfriend. Her name is Sarah." Amber closed her eyes. "Sarah. He called me Sarah for years. That was his name for me. the name he chose. And now he found another woman, and he's doing the same thing. The cycle doesn't break because the victim leaves, Karen said gently. It breaks when the abuser decides to change. And Derek hasn't decided that. Maybe he never will. But that's not your burden anymore, Amber. You and your girls are free. Legally, physically, completely free. Amber hung up the phone. She sat at her kitchen table for a long time. She thought about the woman named Sarah. She thought about the bruises that woman was wearing right now. She thought about calling someone, reaching out, finding her, telling her run. But she also knew, she knew from her bones, that until Sarah was ready, no one could make her leave. Just like no one had made Amber leave. She'd left because Maisie was hungry and Rosie was sick, and her own body was dying, and she had nothing left except a rusted van and $11 in coins and the desperate primal need to get her children out alive. She picked up the phone and called the domestic violence hotline in Reno. She gave them Derek's name, the girlfriend's name, the address Karen had mentioned, and she said, "There's a woman there who needs help. She might not be ready, but when she is, please be there." Then she hung up and went to pick up Maisie from school. One afternoon in October, a Thursday, warm, the kind of day that feels like summer, pretending it isn't leaving. Maisie came home from school with a piece of paper rolled up in her fist. She walked past Amber in the kitchen. She walked past Rosie playing with blocks on the floor. She walked straight to Cole, who was sitting at the table drinking coffee, and she handed him the paper without a word. Cole unrolled it. A crayon drawing. A big man with yellow hair and a line on his face, kneeling next to a small girl with yellow hair and pink shoes. Behind them, a row of motorcycles. Cole counted them, 93. Maisie had counted carefully, each one drawn with a different color crayon lined up in a parking lot. Above the drawing, in shaky 5-year-old handwriting, 3 words. He didn't leave. Cole held that drawing for a very long time. His hands didn't shake. His face didn't crumble. But something behind his eyes changed. Something ancient and heavy and locked shifted, like a door opening in a room that had been sealed for 19 years. He didn't speak. He couldn't. The words weren't there. Every language he knew, the language of the road, the language of the club, the language of fists and engines and hard silence, none of it had a word for what he felt holding that piece of paper. Maisie didn't need words. She climbed onto the chair beside him, leaned against his arm the way she'd done that first night in the hospital, and they sat together, quiet, still. 2 people who had found each other in the most unlikely place in the world, a diner full of bikers and a girl with a paper bag, and had held on. Rosie chased a butterfly near the window and squealed when it landed on the glass. Amber stood in the kitchen doorway, drying a dish, watching her children exist in a world where no one was yelling, and no one was hitting, and no one was running. And she pressed the dish towel against her mouth and breathed. Cole looked at the drawing one more time. He didn't leave. 3 words, written by a child who had watched every man in her life walk away or stay and destroy. And this time, this one time, someone stayed. Someone knelt down on a diner floor and made a promise and kept it. He folded the drawing carefully. He put it in the inside pocket of his vest, against his chest, next to the place where he'd carried Emma's memory for 19 years. And now he carried them both, the daughter he'd lost and the daughter who'd found him. That evening, Cole rode out of Pahrump as the sun went down. His Harley rumbled beneath him. The desert stretched out in every direction. He passed the highway sign for Beatty and thought about stopping at Dusty's Grill, but kept riding. He'd stop next time. There would always be a next time now. Behind the counter at Dusty's, Patty had hung a framed photograph on the wall near the register. 93 motorcycles in a parking lot. A small girl standing in a doorway holding a crumpled paper bag. She'd written a small caption underneath in black marker. The day everything changed. Truckers asked about it sometimes. Patty would tell the story, not all of it, just enough. A little girl came in needing help, and 93 men stood up. Every trucker who heard it left a bigger tip. A few of them cried into their coffee and pretended they hadn't. Monk kept the minivan running for another 2 years before Amber could afford a replacement. He never charged a cent. When she finally drove a used Honda off a lot in Las Vegas, paid for with her own money, she called Monk and thanked him. He said, "Lady, my daughters are 12 and 14 now. They know your story. They know what Maisie did. And every time they complain about something, I tell them about a 5-year-old who walked barefoot into a room full of strangers to save her sister. So trust me, you've paid me back 1,000 times over." Buckshot showed up every few months with something for Maisie. Books, a bicycle, a telescope because she told him once she wanted to see the stars up close. He never stayed long. He'd drop off whatever he brought, sit on the porch with Maisie for 20 minutes, steal half her snack, let her punch his arm, and ride out. Amber asked him once why he kept coming. He shrugged. "She reminds me of someone I couldn't help when I was 12. Helping her now fixes something I can't explain, so I just keep showing up." Diesel called his own kids more, every night, without fail. His wife noticed. She asked what changed. He told her about Maisie, and the paper bag and the dumpsters, and Cole crying in the parking lot. She listened. Then she held him for a long time and said, "You're a good father, Ray." He shook his head. "I'm a trying father. That girl's mother was a good parent. She drove 3 days with pneumonia. I just make phone calls, but I'm never going to stop making them." Stitch transferred to a hospital in Pahrump 6 months later. Took a pay cut, didn't care. She ran a free clinic 1 night a week for women who couldn't afford medical care or were afraid to seek it. She called it the Amber Program. Amber didn't know about the name for 3 months. When she found out, she showed up at the clinic, walked through the door, saw her name on the wall, and stood there for a full minute before she could speak. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Stitch looked at her. "Yeah, I did." Preacher kept his pocket Bible next to his knife. He kept writing, he kept praying. He kept showing up wherever Cole needed him. And in every sermon he gave, in truck stops, in campgrounds, in the back rooms of bars where men gathered and pretended they weren't hurting, he told one story. Not the whole story, just the part about a girl in a paper bag in a room full of men who stood up. And Cole Brannigan rode, through Nevada, through California, through the long, empty highways where a man can think without interruption and grieve without witness. He carried 2 things in his vest pocket now, a drawing by a 5-year-old girl and the memory of a daughter he would never hold again. One was a wound. The other was the beginning of something he didn't have a name for yet, but it felt, for the first time in 19 years, like it might be forgiveness. Not from the world, not from Laura, not even from Emma, from himself. Because Cole Brannigan had spent 19 years believing he was the man who left, the man who chose the road, the man who wasn't there when it mattered. And then a 5-year-old girl with no shoes and a crumpled paper bag walked into a diner and gave him the chance to be something else. And he took it. He knelt down, he made a promise, and he kept it. 3 words in crayon on a piece of paper, folded against a scarred man's heart, riding through the desert toward the next place he was needed. He didn't leave.